Today I have for you a GT Rapid Transport. My wife found this bike on Craigslist, and I think this is going to be the next one I tear down and rebuild. It's a really nice bike actually, but it's got a Shimano Nexus rear hub in it. How many speed is it? It's got this really cool looking shifter I haven't seen before. Let's see what I've got for gears over here. We have 7 speeds, so it's one of the higher end Nexuses. I think most of them were like 5 speed, but at least most of the ones that I've seen were 5 speed. This one apparently has 7. It's horrendously filthy. The person who owned this bike before me was something of a cobbler. When I say cobbler, I mean somebody who doesn't fix anything correctly. Leaves stuff to rattle. This thing was covered in duct tape and random bullshit accessories when we got it. So that's why I'm gonna have to go over it with Gooby gone, because it's got all kinds of tape residue and garbage. But overall, the bones of this thing are pretty solid. I went and rode it around, and it's a very, very nice riding, comfortable bike. But the paint, because of the previous owner, is completely trashed. I mean, it's dinged and nicked and nicked and dinged, and it had all kinds of crap bolted to it. I think this person was like, I don't know what they were doing with this thing, but they had every accessory known to man bolted to this thing. And there's several spots where the paint is actually worn through, like right there. I don't know what that would be from. Probably rubbing up against something, maybe like a shoe. Probably like the back of somebody's shoe when they're pedaling. Not sure, but it's gonna be a really nice bike. So now that I got it up in the stand and I got a chance to take a good look at it, I think this one is a good candidate for a tear down and build up. So we are going to tear it completely down, repaint it, I think white. I'm not going to put this GT logo back on it or the Rapid Transit thing. I'm going to have to come up with a cool name for this thing. I have to think about that. I will dub it, I don't know, probably like hipster trash or something. I don't know. We'll come up with a good name for it though, but first I got to tear it all down. Behold, the most secure chain guard on the face of the planet. Who did this? So the bolt there is off. There's 2 on the other side that are off, but you have to take the crank set off to get this chain guard off. Who the hell does this? Oh, is that a quick link? I think I got a quick link. Okay, so it does occur to me that even in like the time lapse, I probably still look like the monkey from 2001: A Space Odyssey, beating stuff with a bone when I'm trying to get this thing out. But whoever came up with this, they deserve a nice swift kick to the crotch, because who does this? So this, the crankset gets stuck behind these 2 tabs, right? And those 2 tabs are stuck behind these 2 tabs. So there's no good, clean way to get this thing out of there other than to kind of like smoosh it through this way and then try and crank everything around I don't know, but this is like a completely asinine way of doing this. This is a Shimano Nexus 7-speed internal hub, which means I am going to screw this up somehow. So let's all come along on the adventure and see what happens. All right, so I'm going to try and get you right up in the inner workings of this thing here. So there's a cable right here, and a cable down here. So I think I need to release this so the tension's off of there. Let's make sure we're in the low gear. I don't know if that's what you do. Do you put it in low gear before you take it off? Is this thing just going to go pling and fly everywhere? I don't know enough to do things. The end is off. There's a set screw here that should be able to yank that cable through now. And then I have to undo, there's like a little thing over here for the drum brake, which is pretty cool. This has a drum brake on it, which is pretty awesome. I kind of like drum brakes. I actually kind of like internal hubs too. I just don't understand the Shimano ones. There's probably somebody in the comments right now. They're the same as the Sturmey Archer. Well, maybe they are. I don't know. But all I know is I can rebuild a 3-speed Sturmey Archer in about 15 minutes, and this thing is like particle physics. So, all right, Nip-X for the win. Yeah, I totally meant to drop that on the floor. That's where it goes. We'll get this fender off, and we'll get the wheel off, and we'll put it over in the bin, and we will hope everything is okay until I go to put all this back together. Because it ran pretty good, so I am not going to open Pandora's box. In this case, that is Pandora's box. And try and redo anything with it. We'll take a good cursory look at it and make sure it's got grease, and that's about it, because I didn't hear any bearing noises or anything that made it sound like it was unhealthy, so we're just going to leave it as is. Unless I start reading on the internet too much, and then I'll probably try to change the gear ratios in it or some other crazy shit that I shouldn't be messing with. Because that's how I work. All right. What was that? Oh, well, never mind. That thing came up pretty decent. That wasn't bad. Of course, this hub weighs about a bajillion pounds. In case you don't know the conversion, a bajillion pounds in road bike language is about 1,000 grams. I think it's plunking me. I think it's actually 5. 4 maybe? Aha, I think you are a 4. You're just a really dirty 4. There's definitely a dirty 4 joke in there somewhere, but I am not touching that one. I don't want to get banned on YouTube. Took a perfectly good running bike and put it in a box. There's the seat. Here is the frame. And I have to admit, it says this is aluminum. Somewhere on this it says Aluminlux, if I remember right. Oh no, it says 4130. Never mind. I was just about to say that this is the heaviest aluminum frame I've ever seen, but it's steel. So I guess that makes sense then. It's welded very nicely though. But yeah, it's a pretty decent frame. This thing is probably indestructible. I mean, it is really, really nicely made. This is a GT from, I don't know if it was from before or after they got bought, but it's not a half bad frame. It's just incredibly heavy. All right, well, I just sent the frame and the fork off to paint, along with the chain guard and the fenders. I've got a pretty good idea on what we're going to do for paint job on this one. So now it comes down to this hub, which is a Nexus 7-speed. internal hub. These are actually pretty cool hubs. They're a lot like the 3-speed Sturmey Archers, just with a lot more planetary gears inside. And they are a very nice hub for a bike like this, something that's just kind of a cruiser, because this thing is heavy. But it seems to be in really good working order, so I think I'm just going to take it apart and maybe do a little bit of preliminary greasing on the outside and then just kind of clean it up a little bit. But I really do kind of like these hubs, as much as I give them shit for being heavy. They really aren't half bad. So let's just get it cleaned up a little bit here, and we'll get it all ready to go back on the bike. So that's back together. Okay, let me put the wing nut back on. Yeah, of course that fell. Why wouldn't it? All right, and we are back. It has been about 3 weeks since the last time I worked on this bike. I had a chance to get it painted. I had a chance to name it. This bike is now Herman. Welcome to Herman. It's named Herman for a pretty obvious reason. This bike, if you grew up in the 80s, really only brings one kind of bike to mind that has this sort of swoopy lines. That's the bike from the Pee Wee Herman movie. I don't know why, when I first saw this bike, even though it was like a sage green color, it just kind of stuck in my head as like the Pee Wee Herman bike. So I decided to make a bit of a tribute. It's going to be a little bit less out there. It's going to be a little bit more subtle, just because I want somebody to be able to buy this bike and ride it without being constantly barraged by Pee Wee Herman quotes. But I do kind of like the look of it, and we'll kind of see how it turns out. I know what it's going to look like in my head, but I'm not exactly sure how it's going to look once all the painted components get put together. We'll just kind of see that adventure while we all put it together. So let's get started on getting this thing reassembled, and we'll kind of go from there. I'm going to start with the headset. I need to sand in here so I can get a good break between the paint and where the metal contacts the headset, because otherwise what happens is if you try and compress that headset in here without doing that, without just putting a line of separation between the paint on the inside and the paint on the outside, sometimes it'll crack and you'll get a crack of paint that'll form up on the lip and it looks like shit. So we're going to sand that, and then we're going to grease it so we can get all that compressed together. So like I said, we kind of just want to get just a little bit of a break. We don't really have to sand everything in here, just a touch on the underside as well. So let's just get that done. Trying not to get my hands dirty so I don't mess up this paint. All right. So if you don't have this tool, you can use a piece of threaded rod. I have done it in the past, if I'm being honest. A piece of threaded rod and some washers will do the job a lot of the time, but you risk having the headsets sort of like cocked to one side, and it's a bitch if that happens. You have to pound it back out with a screwdriver, and it's really not good. All right, just press away like so. Now, if I hadn't put grease in there, it would not have gone in that smooth. If you don't put grease in there, you got to really torque on these. Let's look at the bearings for this and see what we got. Looks like this is pretty grody and gross. So this is definitely gonna need some cleaning. I'll probably wire brush this and try and polish it out, because we're gonna want like a nice chrome finish on this stuff. And the bearings are looking pretty gross, actually. I forgot to run these through the ultrasonic. I already ran the brakes through, they're back there. These got a lot of residue. The grease isn't in too bad a shape. There's not a lot of grit in it. We still want to clean those out. This has a lot of grease residue on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of this stuff in here. We'll put a little bit of brake parts cleaner in here and just swoosh it around for a little bit, try and get that stuff dissolved and knocked loose. It'll dissolve in the grease and then grime and nonsense and get it out of there. This was the original brake carrier that was on it. It's black. I don't want a black one on a red bike. I want as much chrome stuff on that bike as I could possibly get. So we're gonna get rid of that. Found this one in my pile of stuff, and I think that this one's gonna work a little bit better. And I like that it's got a adjuster on it. That makes setting the brakes a lot easier. So I'm gonna get this polished up. I'm gonna get that polished up. That stuff we're gonna get cleaned up. Then we're gonna go install it on now. Got this all nice and polished, so that looks way better than it did before. This polished up real nice, and so did the nut. Got that plastic seal back in there again, so this all goes together. It should look something like that. Let's get this up. Something like that, which will look pretty nice. Okay, I like that. Doing my thing with grease. There we go. Stick up in there. I haven't tried it this way before. Yeah, that will. All right, we'll put some on the bearing surface too, because it's good to be thorough and stuff. And open here. And down we go, don't we? More weight equals more tension. There we go. Add our brake. And top nut. About right. Right. So we'll call that headset put on. About good enough right there. So we'll probably be adjusting that later. But that looks so much better than it did before. Very nice. Not really tightened down, just sort of close enough to tighten down. There we go. All right, so before we get those levers back on, I have to get this shifter back on. And unfortunately, I think we might have our first sort of adventure in bike repair here. Now, I've been trying to get, oh, well, I clicked it there. That was a bad idea. If you look in that hole, you can see the cable moving around. Now, I'm supposed to be able to just push the cable through that hole, but unfortunately, when you pull it out of its seat, it's bent, so it doesn't want to come out. So the more I push on it, the more it just goes deeper into that housing. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to try and take this apart and see if I can't fix it that way, because I don't think it's going to come out easy. It's going to fight us. It's probably the original cable to the system. So let's hope when I take this apart, I don't get springs and stuff flying everywhere, because I've never seen a shifter like this before. Let's put my magnet base just in case. Okay. And where's my screwdriver? There we go. All right, let the adventure begin. Okay. Not bad. Okay, that was easy. Let's see. Well, I probably should take it apart, clean it anyway. But that's what I mean. If you look here, it went straight down as soon as I popped it out. Probably from years of being bent over. So I was never going to get that thing out of there. Now we can take that out and get rid of it. I'm just going to brush this, spray it with a little bit of gun oil, because gun oil is magic on these. All right, and there we go. It's all nice and clean now, so we can put it all back together. I really love this stuff for cleaning this, for cleaning these intricate little components like this. It works well for guns, and it works really well for just any sort of like intricate clockwork stuff like this. It knocks all the debris and nonsense out of there. So we'll just get these brushed up a little bit and then get it back together. That was probably one of the simplest shifters I think I've taken apart in all reality. Well, it looks like, oh, this has got a couple different ways it can index. So we're just going to do this loose for now because I'm probably going to have to change how that's indexed on there. Because I didn't learn from my mistake. I didn't take any notation as to how that was indexed on there. So we'll get it on there and figure it out. Okay, so I thought I'd do a quick show and tell as to why I hate these things so much. This is the twist shifter off of the Maroon bike. I don't know if I posted that video yet, but if I haven't, I gave the customer a free upgrade to trigger shifters because I didn't want to spend a bunch of money only to have these things take a crap later and cause problems. There's a lot of reasons why I hate these. The biggest reason being is they're basically just a cost-cutting measure by bike manufacturers. These aren't really meant to be serviceable. They're kind of a pain in the ass. I mean, you can see as soon as the rubber gets a little old, it just sort of falls apart when you try to replace the cables. This is a combo unit, so it's brakes and cables. So if this goes to shit, you have to replace both, which is fantastic. Probably saves money on the manufacturing side. But these are basically meant to be disposable. There's not really anything serviceable for the most part on these. And whereas these work with a clockwork ratcheting mechanism that's got metal pawls that are clicking together for positive shifts. The way these work, they have basically just a spring on this side with a detent in it. I'm not sure if you can see that in there, but there's a spring with a detent, and then that just clicks into these little notches in the plastic, which in theory should be great, should be fine. I mean, it should be an elegant, simple way to manufacture this so that it'll work. The problem being is as that spring slowly wears down these bumps, your shifts become less and less positive. When you click, it'll index a little bit differently than it did the last time. The distance between clicks slowly changes and gets wider. So it makes it a pain in the ass to try and tune a derailleur with these things because everything's switching around. So you can never get it quite right when these get old. You can just sort of get the least shitty that you can tune it to is the best way to put it, because your indexes are never going to be right once these start to wear out. If you get sand in here or something, it definitely wears these out faster. Anything sort of abrasive, and as you can see, there's no grease in here at all to keep this thing greased up. So I don't know how old this one is, but there's like a little bit of red in there where maybe grease used to exist, but it doesn't anymore. So you can't buy, or at least I haven't found any place where you can buy these individual components. Like I can't buy just this to replace it. If I could, maybe this wouldn't be quite so bad, or maybe if this was made out of metal so that at least it would wear slower. But these things just should be avoided at all costs, in my opinion. This one I just took out of the garbage so I could show you. But if I'm building a bike, it never gets these put on. The only reason I even keep them in inventory is for spare parts in case I have to try and fix one of them. But I hate these. I hate these, I hate these, I hate these. Even worse than freewheels. It does occur to me too that after going on a few minute rant about why twist grip shifters suck, probably should also mention that any bike that has them, we can usually retrofit. At least if it's a 7 or 8 speed, we can definitely retrofit it. That's the easy way. So I don't want to fray the end of my shifter cable. Oh, nice if I don't step on it as well. All right. Now I hope my shift cable is long enough because this had a long ass shift cable. Again, I'm just kind of loosely putting these in here until we get all the cables running and everything, and then we'll cinch everything up once we get back on the ground. I wouldn't dare put my grips on just yet, because then you're just asking for something to go south. If you put the grips on at this point, that's like a guarantee that the universe will come out and go, no. Nope, we're not going to do that. You're going to redo all of that all over again. Ask me how I know. All right, let's get these brakes put on. Get my shift cable out of the way. Yeah. Now let's put this over there. There we go. All right, a little bit of grease. I already cleaned all this stuff up a bit. So you want relatively even pressure. So that looks pretty good. Throw a little blue Loctite on these threads. And that's too much, and that's too much. Perfect. Oops. Wrong spot. There we go. Well, now it's time for the mostest fun in the entire world. We get to put this bottom bracket back in. Unfortunately, if you notice, there's a lot of rust and nastiness and paint. I didn't mask this off as well as I had hoped. Now, this isn't the first time this has happened, so I made a couple of tools for this a long time ago. This is just, what I did is I took a socket and I brazed it into a standard English threaded bottom bracket shell. And then I just cut slices on this so that the debris that we basically chase out of the threads has a place to go. And then I just basically thread this in, and it kind of chases those threads out. So we'll just throw a little grease in there and try again. I want to try and get as much of that red out of there as I can. The grease kind of helps. We'll put that down there for now. So it doesn't cut threads, but it does kind of chase out a lot of the garbage that's in there. It gets caught in those cuts. So you can see all the stuff that's in there. Let's try to get this guy in there. Oh, wait. I almost forgot this thing. It's just gravy. That's a fantastic way to mount that. I'm sure a bolt attached to the frame would have been way too much of an inconvenience. There we go. Well. Alright, so we're going to put this bottom bracket, or this. Okay, so I've got the bottom bracket torqued and in place. So now we just got to put this crank set on, which I already cleaned up. Looks pretty decent. If you remember right, this is kind of screwy the way this goes on. So what I've got to do, snake this through here, then connect this up. I'm just going to finger tape this thing for now. And then so that goes on there. This, no. I do not understand why this has got to be so difficult. It's somewhat tight. I'm not going to tighten this down all the way because I have a feeling there's a high probability this could have to come right back off again. I have no idea why. Okay, I'm going to try and get this back wheel mounted. Actually, before I get it mounted up there, I'm going to put the valve cap in. I'm just going to kind of try and get it like pre-fitted in there because there's a bunch of nonsense that's got to happen. Well, it looks like I jumped the gun just a little bit because before I put the wheel on, I need to put on the fenders. So we're going to take this, put it back over here in its home. These go on pretty simple. I'm just hoping that the wheels won't be nearly impossible to put on once I get these put in. That's better. Decided to go with white for the fenders and the chain guard to kind of match things up. If I remember right. And that looks right. And that is the fender on. We'll step back in a second here so I can take a look at it because that should make everything pop out. That does pop out pretty good, doesn't it? Okay, for the front one, I already put the struts on it, the side braces, just because if I try to do those while this is locked in with the bar right there, it's going to make it a lot harder. So we're going to put those on ahead of time to make it easier. Try to snake this through here so it doesn't get everything mangled. Oh, that's too long. That is the wrong bolt. All right, now that I got the fenders on, you can see what I mean about the Pee-wee bike. Looks a lot more like that bike now, doesn't it? All right, so now I'll move on to getting the back wheel put on, I hope. So I have a feeling getting it through all of this is going to be a royal pain in the butt, but we'll get we'll get it figured out here in a second. All right, let the fight begin. So I'm gonna try and come straight up. And hopefully there's enough room in the back. That's what I was afraid of. There really kind of isn't. Shit. Okay, got all that. Got all that tore apart. Now we can start to try and do this again. I had to at least try that just because I don't like trying to mess with this otherwise. But I will say, after having the white fender on, or white fenders on, I do think now, after looking at it, that I'm probably going to go with black cables because I think the white cables would be too much white. I think the black, like the three colors, I think that'll probably work better. Alright, so now we're going to try and get this brake. Alright, so there's a few things I got to hook up. I got to hook up the cable to this drum brake, and I have to hook up the shifter to the shifter over here. The one I really don't remember much about is this drum brake. That one is going to be a little bit of a mystery. This is pretty straightforward, just cable to there, and then comes up here, and set screw, done. So the shifter is actually super easy, at least knock on wood. Hope I'm not jinxing myself here, but the shifter on this looks like it's relatively easy. It looks like it just comes in the bottom over here. The housing goes straight to there and then comes up, runs through a groove over here into a set screw, set the set screw down, and then shift through the gears, make sure everything goes okay, and that should just move everything internally so that it functions correctly. But the drum brake over here is kind of another story because I don't remember what the linkage looked like. Well, I'll bring you over here so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so in this one, in order to keep this from spinning this way, there's a lock bar that locks to a slot down here. And then somewhere there was a piece of a linkage that connected it to this so that when you pull, that's what initiates your drum. But I need to find that, and I don't remember what happened to it because it's been weeks. Step one here is going to be getting this brake put back on here. What we're going to have to do, see this arm connects here, and that's what keeps it from rotating when you hit the brake. Hold that brake. So what we're going to have to do here, let's get this put on here, but we just want to finger tight this thing because I have to slide it back and forth. I still don't have the chain on yet. So we're going to get this thing as dialed in as we can. Alright, so that goes there. And then there's this piece that holds the cable that eventually gets tied up here. Which I think this is, I think the cable just goes through this hole, through a hole in this, right? Yes, there's a hole in this, so that's where the cable goes. Then this, it's hard to see, but there's like a slot under here that this holder goes into. All right, so we'll cinch that down later, but that connects everything up on the brake side until I get the cable run, which we'll do in a little bit. Next, we're gonna have to run the cable for the shifter side. This is one of those instances when I'm really happy that I saved the original cable housing, because to try and guess at how long that would need to be, I probably have to just come over here with the whole roll and try and run it all the way up. This one's a little bit different too in that there's no brakes in the housing from the shifter all the way down to where it's going. It uses these little like C-shaped clamps that you can twist the cable into. And because of that, I'm gonna do something I usually don't do, and I'm going to run the housing first and then run the cable, because I don't see any other really good way to do this, seeing as I have to have this on while everything's assembled, which is still crazy to me. But maybe I'm assembling this whole thing backwards. I don't really know. If you have a lot of experience with this bike, please tell me why I'm all stupid and wrong in the comments. I'd love to hear it. So I'm gonna have to. There. So this is gonna come up through there, and then we have to route it around through the chain guard. I really do like these clips though. If I build a bike like this, I'll probably use something similar because I do like these clips. All right. They do keep it nice and secure. They keep it nice along the body of the bike. They're kind of nice. All right, so Gonna run our cable. Actually, before I do that, let's clean this and get a little bit of lube on here, because that is a very, very long cable housing. Luckily it's long enough. I was kind of secretly worried that it wasn't going to be long enough. All right, so then we'll push this through here. All right, 3 millimeter. Make sure that set screw is not tight at all. And then this comes up and through. And don't quote me, but I'm about 90% sure that that's how that goes. And if this works out, then this is probably the easiest hub on the planet to set up. Seems to be doing shifty things. That seems to be working. We're not going to cut that cable yet, though, because, well, you've seen how the rest of this has gone so far. I've had to take stuff apart a few times already. But we will do this just to kind of keep it out of the way. Yeah, right up in the air where the chain goes. That's out of the way. Perfect. Okay, the brakes, much like the shifter, I'm also very glad I kept this really long cable. And just like the shifter as well, we're going to run the brake cable housing before we run the brake line, just because I think it's going to be a whole lot easier. I do really like these clips. I'm totally going to use these on a bike that I braze. All right, now we get the cable. This one's not split in the front, so we'll just pull it through the housing. Hopefully everything will be okay. It's orientated correctly. All right, cable's through. There we go. We'll get that. We'll route this through the nut. So we're going to try and not get this too tight, because I'm probably still going to have to move this wheel this way and that way once we get the chain on, which unfortunately I can no longer procrastinate about. So I guess let's get the chain on. Now, one thing that I found out a long time ago for snaking these through is if you use a piece of brake cable, like an old one, you can usually snake that through the first link and make it a little easier to snake stuff around. It's not going to be necessary for the back wheel, but to get it over the chain wheel, which is what I'm really worried about, that might be necessary. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run it through here, and then snake this over to where we got to go through. And I'm going to go to the other side and try and pull it up and over. All right. Okay, so that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, actually. There we go. All right. So with that, chain is officially on. So I got everything tightened up. I got everything lubed. Chain is all lubed up. All the cables are all lubed up. Everything's nice and tight. And I'm happy to say that it does appear that hooking this up is just that easy. It's just a cable and a set screw in the back. As you can see, we're going through the gears. That back wheel is getting faster and faster. I don't know what that tink is. Oh! Crank arm is, I'm going to have to bend the chain guard, so I'm sure you can hear that tink. But we can shift back down. It shifts great, it runs great. And I have to admit, after doing one of these, when it does stop great, I have to admit, after doing one of these, I think I would like to do another Nexus hub build sometime in the future. I mean, they really are kind of nice for a bike that you just want to bang around town on or just go ride with. I mean, they keep all of the weather off of the components that are needed for shifting. You know, it's internal, so all of the grease and everything is internal. It doesn't really get subjected to weather, you know, except for the cog on the outside. But it's not like a derailleur where all of the inner workings of the derailleur are just open to the elements and it picks up whatever road grime it picks up. Same thing with all of the gears that it shifts through. Those all just pick up road grime. And you've seen on some of my other videos exactly how gross those can get. I mean, they just pick up a lot of road debris and garbage. So this is just a really nice setup. I mean, having the drum brake on it too, you know, all of that is enclosed as well. So even like disc brakes will sometimes get bent. They're really nice, but they do get bent sometimes. I've had it happen on my track. And rim brakes are actually pretty good for the most part for stuff like that, but they are really bad in the rain, and they are really bad in a couple of other things. They go out of adjustment quite often. You have to pay a lot of attention and maintenance to rim brakes, which I still like them, but that is a short side of them. But the drum brake, I kind of like it. It doesn't stop as well as some things, but for something like this, it's perfectly adequate. This doesn't fall as soon as I start unloosening this. Unloosening, start loosening. Like that. That's what I was afraid of. All right, this thing is a tank. It is not lightweight. All right. Not bad at all. Kickstand. Okay, so I'm happy to report that Herman passed the ride test with flying colors. He has earned his grips, so we will put the grips on. I also made some decals for the side plates on this, just to give it a little bit more flair.
We need to talk about your flair.
Give Herman some pieces of flair. So I got some labels made that say Herman Deluxe, so we'll get those put on as well. And then it'll kind of be final reveal time. Where's the end of that? All right, I'm gonna get these brakes moved. I'm gonna get the labels on, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, and here's Herman all done. I added some decals for a little bit more retro flair to it, just to kind of top off the whole look. All in all, I think it turned out really, really well. I said this bike was pretty ugly and beat up when I got it in. The paint was destroyed, but all the components were in pretty good shape. It's got relatively high-end stuff on it. And now I think it's a pretty nice bike that just about anybody would like to ride. So I think I'm gonna put this up for sale here at the shop. We'll see how much I asked for it. I'm not really sure yet. In fact, put in the comments what you think Herman would be worth, because I have no idea what to charge for this. I mean, it's got a 7-speed rear end with a drum brake. That's a pretty high-end feature. It rides really, really nice, and it's a really solid, rigid frame. So I really like this bike. I think it'll make somebody a really nice cruiser. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. Well, that about does it for today's video. Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to do the like and subscribe stuff. It really helps the new channel out. If Herman looks like a bike that you might be interested in, be sure to check him out on our website, and I will catch you again on the next one.